Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is actually a familiar face for our season 2 lineup. His episode actually debuted a few weeks ago. It was entitled From Talking About It to Being About It. It's actually been one of our highly popular episodes so far in season 2. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, I definitely would encourage you to do so. But for today, we're not doing a follow up to that episode. We actually, I had an opportunity to speak to our guest this evening shortly after his original episode aired, and we got into a conversation about a particular topic that he proposed that we perhaps put a show together to discuss. And our show tonight is entitled When I Grow Up, but the subject matter that we're going to be speaking about is about careers. We're going to look at careers from all different aspects, from how do we formulate the decisions and deciding, what it is that I want to do with my career? What paths should we be considering taking? What influences might come into play? We'll talk a little bit about mentorship and a whole host of other things that are just common everyday challenges that people have when it comes to the subject matter of career choices and the proper paths to be on. And so I'm pleased once again to have this brother on board. He and I have known each other since our days in college. So you're talking about a relationship that spans well over 35 years. He's a husband, he's a father, and most importantly, he's a man of God. And once again, as before, is taking time out of his busy schedule to hang out with us again, with the hopes of, again, sharing, inspiring, encouraging, surrounding subject matter for this evening. So it is my privilege and honor to bring my friend, my brother today back on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Eric Davis. Eric, thank you so much for being on again, my brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe, for having me. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed my time on the previous episode, and thought, I want to give some more. And so, just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Currently living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and on the last episode, I talked about starting a new job. Well, I've started that job and really enjoying it in a tech industry, life science tech industry, and there's a whole lot of new things to learn, which has really revitalized me and really was the kind of impetus for me to reach out to Joe and talk about to talk episode on careers and that such. Joe mentioned married, 2 daughters, and they're both away at college and getting ready to come home for the summer. So really looking forward to spending some time with them.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And again, glad to have you back on, man. And so soon, because I don't normally have. I have had repeat guests before, but I don't get a chance to necessarily get them connected back on in a shorter period of a time. But man, we had an awesome time before, and I know we'll have an awesome time again. And to my listeners, Eric and I were discussing before the show started about how we had some technical issues on his original episode, but yet his episode has been one of our more popular ones, and here we are again. We were trying to kick off to today's episode, and we're dealing with some of the same technical issues, and I kind of share with him how while it's very easy for you to get frustrated and annoyed by stuff like that, I actually take it as a blessing in disguise that, if the enemy is out there trying to distract us, to discourage us from having a conversation that needs to be had, then that just even is more reinforcement and more encouragement for me to have us push through however way we need to push through. So as I share with Eric, as I share with all my guests, my most important objective in doing our shows is that the message gets out. So we apologize in advance for any technical glitches or blurps or anything like that. And, but ultimately we want you to get the messaging of what we have to share on each and every episode, including this one. So we have a powerful topic to discuss today. And so I promise you, if you just stay locked in on the topic and not allow yourself to get distracted by the outside noises of the world, not let the enemy get in the way of it all, you will be blessed by this episode, and it'll definitely be worth your time. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump off into our conversation this evening about careers and tapping into that title, that question, if you will, about when I grow up. And, when I came up with that topic that for the show, I really just tapped into a common, conversation that we oftentimes would have when we're little kids, where a teacher or a parent or some other family member might ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so that's how I would like to actually kick off our conversation this evening with you, Eric. So if you would take us back to the beginning when you were a kid, and as you reflect back on that moment in time, if you would tell us, what did you have in mind in your childhood that you wanted to be career wise when you grew up? And why was that particular career path in your mind at that particular time? I'm just kind of curious to see, where did your journey of thinking about career start for you?
Right. So usually this is good because I really had to think back. It's the older I get, the further along it you have to think back. Right? You know, when I was much younger, I recall my father really, pushing and indicating to me and my brother and sister that we were going to go into the military and we were going to do this and I was like, yeah, no, that's not for me. I'm going to college. I'm going to figure something out. But military is not, the path. Thinking back on it, I could be retired now and enjoying life had I gone into the military. But it just, kind of that, that mindset wasn't there, right? And so I bounced on a number of different career thoughts, I guess, and kind of I think early as early as I can remember, I thought I wanted to be a dentist. Um, I liked the tools that the dentist had in his office. And, when he'd step out the room, I'd sit there and start playing with the tools and looking in drawers and things like that, and seeing all the kind of fascinating shapes of things and stuff like that. And so that was really my objective. And even when I was in college, I was in a pre-dentistry curriculum to kind of really sit for the dental school admissions test after graduation. But somewhere along the line, my career focus changed again, and I think that's kind of really prompted me to kind of think about my career and how it's morphed over the years, and kind of really found my place. And I hopefully as we have this discussion, we'll talk about how we got there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So start for you, your early memories of, hey, it started off, I wanted to be a dentist. And interesting with what you just said is the fact that that
Mhm.
actually was something that stuck with you as all the way up into college. So that does, we know that some people, they know they lock in on a thing very early on, and they do, like yourself, make it all the way up into college before maybe they decide to shift gears or what have you. And then you perhaps have somebody like me that I kind of went a multitude of different directions. So just to kind of give you an example of that is, like, when I think back as far back as you said, get a little older, it takes a little longer to think that far back. But when you think far back like that, I would say the very first job that I thought I wanted to be is I actually wanted to be a police officer. And what's crazy though is I didn't want to be a police officer for the right reasons. Specifically, I wanted to be a state trooper, and the reason why I wanted to be a state trooper was because I always had a love for cars ever since as far back as I can remember, and I thought state troopers always had cool cars, and so I was like, I want to wear a uniform and have a cool car. I think that would be an awesome, career to have. So that's where it started with me, and then as I got a little bit older. And you would be able to attest to this because we're close in age. For those that may be tuning in, if you are a '70s kid, been back, around in those days. One of the popular TV shows at that time that was on was the Brady Bunch, and I used to love watching the Brady Bunch. And I was actually fascinated by if those, of course, who are familiar with the Brady Bunch, that the dad of the household, he was an architect. And I've always been really good at conceptualizing different things that, in terms of, how something should be created or built. I had the vision for what it would look like and how it would be put together. The only shortcoming, however, is that I couldn't draw worth a lick. So, despite my admiration for the career, My lack of artistic skills were such that that was just something out of the window for me. And so that would ultimately, as I got into high school, that led me into my first time where I started to pondering about a possibility of a career in law, to be an attorney. And what ultimately drew me into that was, of course, as you get into high school years, you start talking about college. That gave me an opportunity to open up, to be a part of, I should say, of some possibilities of going on some college tours. And there was one college tour in particular that I had an opportunity to go on. And matter of fact, Tim, of course, you know who Tim is. He actually went on the same college tour with me. And this was held at the time, was held at the University of Iowa. And they used to have a minority pre-law, pre-med conference every year, where they would have a whole weekend of events where minority and other disadvantaged students would come down to the campus, and they had a whole host of events. You got a chance to, depend upon if you were connected with law or med school, whichever one you thought your interest was in, they pair you up with students. You had a chance to stay in the dorms. You had a chance to, see some classroom settings, speak to professors and things like that. So that was what kind of ignited for me my interest in law. So then by the time I got to college, I was actually, as far as I was concerned, even though I majored in economics, my mindset was I'm gonna get my degree, but the thing that I was gonna do was I'm gonna go to law school, and that was kind of the path that I was on, and I was on that path probably until shortly after I got out of college. So we're talking about early 20s, before I decided to let that go and shift into another direction as well. So everybody's paths is different. I think what's important though is that
Mhm.
that you at least allow yourself an opportunity, even as early as in your childhood, allow yourself the opportunity to explore and dream about the various different possibilities. Doesn't mean that you have to decide by the age of 7, what you're going to do for a living. No, but at least start to spark that in your mind. And that kind of leads me to another question I want to ask you real quick. You, of course, being, a father yourself of children. And of course, I have my daughter, you know, if you, when you start thinking back to that, when did you start first having even those kind of conversations with your kids about what do you want to be when you grow up, and what kind of things were you speaking to them about as they were pondering on those decisions about possible career opportunities?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Those conversations, whether they wanted to listen or hear me out or not, we had those conversations. Um, and it's interesting. It's something I think about it, with today's society and the amount of things that kids are exposed to. Um, you know, I think to some degree it may be overwhelming for them,
Hmm.
and seeing success here, seeing success there. Obviously, they're drawn to the success, parts of life, and kind of not wanting to settle on one or admit another. And so the kind of really where I've always pushed my daughters is to get into something that has options, right? Get into
Mm.
something that, if you're going down a certain path and, you get down that path and you decide, yeah, this isn't me, it's much easier to pivot, right, into something that, kind of maybe ancillary to that, or, where you've got some experience in a related field or closely related field that you can, turn into another opportunity, turn into another direction. Even in college, as far as, picking a major, pick something that, you can, easily get out of, and you don't have to take more classes over, stay an extra year or something. You've completed some, most of the prerequisites for whatever degree or direction you want to end up in. And I think a lot of people, get fixated on one direction. I think about you and your, economics. You could have gone anywhere, done anything with an econ degree, right? And you did. You had the opportunity. Although, you wanted to go law, and it's like, well, that doesn't work. Let me, I can translate this into something else, and boom, it works, right? I think that's the key part, for key message that I've given to my daughters is, I've seen people who get into a degree and, or a direction or career path or whatever, and they get stuck. They don't
Mhm.
have experience doing other things. They don't have, it's wherever they chose was not broad enough that they could get experience that they can, translate into other roles.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's really that conversation is really interesting because you could literally take both sides of it and make strong arguments in both ways. So I want to first tap into what
Hmm.
you said about your conversations that you had with your kids, because it's like, I like the fact that you said I wanted you to have options. That, to me, that sounds practical. That sounds logical.
Hmm.
Um, but also, when I think about it, when I take it back to our childhoods, we weren't necessarily, at least my experience, and for many of others that I know that I grew up with, it wasn't really about options as much as it was about stability. It was like, the goal was
Yeah.
for you to get an
Yeah.
education, get a quote unquote good job, whatever that good job was,
Good
that would
job.
provide you what you needed to take care of your families, and you would stay in that career for this long-term period of time, and then you would one day retire and then live out whatever remaining years that there were, which is why we saw so
Hmm.
many of our parents and
Hmm.
grandparents get into a good job, whether it was they were a factory worker or a plant worker, or they were a teacher, or whatever specification that they went into, and that's just all they did and that's all they know. And so they tried to impart that on us by
Right.
saying, what I want you to do different than me is I want you to get the degree, because the degree is going to allow you to command more money. But the mindset was still the same:
Yes.
get that quote
Yeah.
unquote good job and
Yes.
do that thing, and just ride that out. But then, like what you said, the options are great, but then the struggle is like, it's particularly when you get to the college level, it's like, okay, because I remember when I was first going into college, I was just going to, be a quote unquote business major. I still wanted to go to law school, but I was going to major in business. And I remember my mentor at the time, he was like basically discouraging me from going into majoring in business, because as far as he was concerned, everybody majors in business. And he said, you can go ahead and major in business, get a
Mhm.
business degree, and find yourself working at a department store. He said, he was like, do economics, because that'll give you a business background, but it'll be more broad. But then the counter argument to the more broad, the more options is that because there's not a specific per se direction identified, you could sometimes go through that type of educational path, get the degree and everything, and then now you are out here in the work world. And because you don't have a specific specialized thing that you do, it makes it sometimes hard for you to find your space, in whatever job space that you want to be in. Because it's like, okay, you got this degree, but what do you know how to do? Well, I've touched a little bit of here and a little bit of there,
Mhm.
and got a little bit of that, but you haven't mastered one particular thing. You just have experience in a number of different things. So we want a little bit more of this and that in one of those areas. Do you have that? And if you don't, then a lot of times you can find yourself on the outside looking in, and to the point to where you get frustrated because you've
Right.
invested that time and that money, and now you feel like, I got a degree that I can't do anything with. So it's like, well, what was the point? You
Mhm.
know, so
Right. Right.
again, it's
Oh,
not a right or
yeah.
wrong
We can do
thing.
a whole episode on that right there
Just on that,
alone.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's just interesting
Exactly.
that you brought that up, and that's why I wanted to kind of tap in on that. But also, something else I want to kind of go back a little bit, because you said, when I first asked you the question about what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a little kid, um, I know that when we're in that mode at that point in time, particularly in our childhoods, and it even at times can even branch off even into our adulthood, in our young adulthoods, that there are voices that are coming at us, that are speaking to us about that very decision. Sometimes the voice is just simply
Mhm.
a casual one, and again, whether it be a parent or a teacher or whatever, that says, "Hey, Eric, what do you think you want to be when you grow up?" But then sometimes that same voice could be a voice of, they're not just asking you, they're really trying to see if you're going to say what they think you should be when you grow up. What if you're thinking the same thing that they're thinking, like you said with your dad? His thing was military,
Mm-hmm.
and you weren't quite
Mm-hmm.
embracing that. I know I wasn't feeling the idea of going into military,
Which
but
is
I did consider it coming out of high school
right, right.
only because I knew my mom didn't have the money to afford to send me to college. And so I contemplated going military route to provide an opportunity to pay for it, even though that wasn't something that I wanted to do. So with that said, the question that I want to ask you is how much influence if you would that you would say that others had on your career path choices, and was that influence welcomed or unwanted by you? Like, did you go through that point in time where, again, whether it was a parent or somebody else that was trying to really almost, maybe even borderline pressure you or guilt you into a particular career path? Did you experience that? And if so, what was that like for you, having other people give their input, whether it was solicited or not? What was that for you as you were trying to figure out what am I going to do with my
Yeah,
life?
yeah. So I don't necessarily recall any pressure to go a certain direction, particularly a career path. Uh, pick a choose. I think if I look at the two people who were the most, or maybe three people the most influential in my early life, my mother, father, and my grandmother. Um, you know, my grandmother went to college after she retired, and she got a master's degree and traveled the world and all of this. And so that was kind of the model, I guess, or something that kind of I aspired to, through seeing it growing up. Also, my mother went to nursing school. I think she's 7 years old, and I used to help her with her homework and quizzing her for tests and stuff. So that really sparked my interest in the sciences. But there was really never any pressure from either of them to, pick a particular area. I think because I kind of knew that I wanted to be a dentist. They were like, "Oh, hell, that's great. We're gonna support you, whatever you want to do, right, along that road." I think
Right.
it was what was interesting though was my father. He was kind of discouraging me to even go to college, um,
Mm-hmm.
and it had to really do with his generation, his family. In his family, all of the males went into the trades, and all of the females went to college, and so that's
Mm.
just the way that he thought life was supposed to be. And I'd say, "Sorry, pops,"
Mm-hmm.
and he was kind of upset that I wasn't out making money and earning it, and I'm in
Mm-hmm.
college, I'm playing basketball and all of this stuff, and so I just basically ignored it, right? And I think it was helped that my parents were divorced and he didn't live with us, right? So I didn't have to deal with that consistently or all the time. But that was his message, and obviously, years later, my decision worked out, and it wasn't really anything that he had kind of any negative thoughts about, because when I turned 18 and I went to go see him, he treated me more as another adult versus his son, and really thinking that he had to guide me along the way. So that was kind of the interesting thing that I thought. It was he
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to do something to just get out and start working and making money and all of this, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to make more money, and I'm going to after I do this piece.
Absolutely. And that's really what I was getting at with that question, because I know that what you just said is a very common
Mhm.
thing. Like, you could have a parent that, like I said, he didn't see the value in college. Look, go ahead and get this job. I can, sometimes they may even tell you, I can get you on. I
Mhm.
know a guy can get you on right today, and you'll
Right,
make this
right.
amount of money. And
I can
in this
get you
many
all.
years, you'll move up, man. You'll have a solid career. You'll be set.
Mhm.
And this will be just enough that you need to take care of what you
Yep.
need to take care of and raise your family and all that. And sometimes, like I said, because especially when you have a family unit where there is a natural respect or love for those parents, um, like I said, whether they intend to or not, they can sometimes, low key guilt you into a certain path. And so you have to kind
Oh,
of, like you
absolutely.
did, make your decision to kind of stand your ground and say, I appreciate the input, I appreciate the advice, but this is what I want to do, and and venture down that path. Because there's even been examples, where there have been some kids who they were very intelligent and had the mindsets, academically to qualify to get into colleges, but because maybe, let's just say, the parents thought that they should be a doctor or a lawyer, and they wanted to study dance. And you got a parent that says, well, if you do that, then I'm not paying your tuition for that. What does a kid do? Right. There's some adult people right now in 30s, 40s, 50s who are not working the jobs that they wanted to do. They never pursued the careers that they wanted to pursue because of a pressure from a loved one who basically denied, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to financially give to your education. I'm not going to rally around you with that if you go that route. It's like parents trying to live through their kids what they think they should be and what they think they should do. So,
exactly.
And while it starts a lot of times in the younger ages, it is definitely something that traumatizes some people even well into their adult years. And so you got people who are miserable on jobs that they much rather not be at, that they don't feel that they fit in, all because of something that stems back to childhood from an overbearing parent or some other person of influence that just basically all but forced them to pursue this direction versus the one that they really were feeling a connection to. I think back to myself, I kind of walked with you earlier about the transitions of career. So then by the time I got to the attorney mindset, I mean, part of it was my influence, but for my mom in particular, I know that in her mind, that was kind of the career of choice that she saw me as being, I see you being an attorney, this big time famous attorney,
so
making
lots
of money.
That attorney personality?
Kind of.
Did you
but
have that
not necessarily.
Yeah,
it was, I kind of did, but I wasn't sure, but it just felt right. I mean, I told you about the experience that I had on the college tour, and I really enjoyed that, but I wasn't 100% sure per se that that's what I wanted to do. It was just me kind of going off of what I talked about earlier, where you kind of get, imparted upon you that get a good, big time career, so you can enjoy these things and be able to do that. And so you get more caught up in that than you do, is this a good fit for me? And I think ultimately that's where it resonated with me down the road before I ended up going to grad school, where I would ultimately make that shift and say, I don't want to do that. And then, another element that I had to deal with, which I know there are some people who grew up having to deal with a similar thing too, is my mom and the guy that she was dating at the time, and they had a very long-term relationship. You might as well have considered them to be common law married. There was a point in time in my teen years where they had a business. And so the mindset was that it wasn't just their business, it was the family business. And so, you were indirectly kind of being groomed to be a part of the family business. And while I believed in the concept and what they were doing with this particular business, it was a struggle sometimes, because it's like, I like what this is and I don't even mind being a part of it. Do I want to make it my life, that this is my business because it's the family business, or do I want to do my own thing? And so even to that, there are some people who've grown up, and because they come up in families that had that quote unquote family business, that they felt obligated, to be a part, to continue with the family business, especially let's just say if their parents are getting older and it's getting to a point in time where they're needing to step away from that family business, and perhaps they were looking to pass it on to the kids, only to find out that the kids don't have a bit of interest in that business. Then they start feeling some kind of way, like, I built this for you, but I didn't ask for it. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment, but this is not what I want to do. I want to do something completely opposite of the family business. So these kind of things play a role. And like I said, I literally, when I was struggling with that part of it, I was thinking, well, maybe if I get my law degree, I'd even contemplated a point in time, and I even applied, like after undergrad, like, what if I get like get into a dual program where I get a law degree MBA, like JD
Mm-hmm.
MBA program, then I could
Right.
have those skills and I could
Right.
take it back to the business, the family business, and and pour into it
Oh,
like that. I
okay.
was thinking that. There was a point in time where I was processing that, not necessarily pursuing those life career choices for me, but doing it for mom, doing it for the family, not
Oh,
necessarily what was best
yeah.
for me. So you get to, again, you end up
So,
finding yourself living
yeah.
life through the eyes of your parent, not necessarily through what's in your eyes or what's in your heart. And so that's a common struggle
Mm-hmm.
that I know.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Uh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, you didn't.
sometimes the family business can be a goal people aspire to, right? But if,
Hmm.
if you're doing it not for yourself, you're doing it for your parents, in fact, and you don't want to, disappoint them and having the business fail or them going, them having to close the business because there's no one to take it over. And that's almost a guilt trip there.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of people who've fallen victim to that. I mean, in our particular scenario, the business didn't pan out, but it wasn't because of me. It just didn't pan out. But, nevertheless,
Hmm.
there was a certain part of me that kind of struggled with what is it that I really want to do versus how much do I have to feel committed to the family business type of thing. So, these are kind of some of the
Right,
struggles that we go
right.
through, and I'm wanting to talk about some of this because these are very real things that people are trying to, maybe even right now that don't get a chance to listen to this, they may be stuck in that situation right now, and they're very much grown people wanting to get out, but not knowing how to say to that family,
Hmm.
I want out. I want to do my own thing. How do I even
Yeah.
get? And matter of fact, I'll throw that question out to you. If you knew of somebody that was in a situation like that, um, I'm connected to a family business right now. I'm connected to a career
Hmm.
that really wasn't the one I wanted. I'm nothing against the family business, nothing against the career, but I really like to do something else. But I know if I do something else, it'll be disappointing. What was it like when you think back to you taking your stand with your dad? I know he wasn't directly in the household or whatever, but what was your motivation of courage, or what would be your words to say to that person if you feel like you're trapped like that, or you feel like you're being guilted in that way? What would be your advisement to say to them that this is what I would recommend you consider
Hmm.
doing to make your stand while also being respectful and not to show that you're not being
Right.
unappreciative or whatever, but to say, hey, this is my life, I gotta do this. What would your response be on something like that for somebody who's
So,
currently struggling in that area?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and be honest, I think the person who wants you to, to get into the family business, or person who wants you to go into the career they want you to go into versus, you wanting to do your own thing, is really controlling. Um, and for someone who is being controlled, the difficult part of, kind of, getting out of being controlled is willing to risk loss of that relationship. And
Hmm.
that is the hardest part. And, whether it's a parent, a close friend, another relative, whatever, being able to, kind of see that relationship for what it's worth, right? It's a controlling relationship that, you really have to separate yourself from and be willing to risk losing that person controlling you, because they're going to be upset, right?
Hmm.
That's a manipulation tactic, them being upset that you're not following their path, and if they are upset, they're not supportive. That's kind of indicator number one that they're being manipulative. And so if you can kind of muster up the courage, it's hard to kind of think that you're disappointing someone, by living your dream, right? And which sounds idiotic, right?
Hmm.
If you living your dream disappoints someone, then they weren't supportive of you, in the beginning, and it's hard to get to that point. I'm certainly not a therapist or psychologist, but I always say, I have no problem to kind of, right? That's just, you're not here to support and help me reach my goals or my dream or whatever. I just need it, right? It's not going to help me. And I have family members who, they're family members. My mother always said, uh, you can't choose your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose. They're just family, and so I have no problem, uh, you know, kind of moving on to kind of getting where I need to get to, and with my father, right? It's it helped that I went away to school. It helped that he never came to any of my basketball games. It helped that he was off in his own world and everything revolved around him. If I wasn't in his world, I didn't matter. So, and it also helped that when I was 18, he treated me like a man and not a kid that he needed to tell what to do. So I think that's the first thing that I would absolutely say is just be willing to let go of those relationships, and it's hard, absolutely hard. Right?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's again, you're not dismissing the fact that it would be a difficult decision, that it'd be a difficult conversation to have. But I think you're driving home the fact that it's a
Mhm.
necessary conversation to have, and if it means that
Yeah,
somebody's going to feel some kind of way, even if it's somebody that's near and dear to you, don't allow yourself to be guilted by that. Because that's a control
yes,
mechanism. Instead,
yes,
you have to
yeah.
live your dream, live your purpose, and other people, regardless of them being confused by it, maybe not understanding it, wishing you went another path, that's
Mhm.
all fine and good, but they don't get the final say on this. And if they can't respect that,
Right,
then that's more on their problem of theirs than it is a problem of yours. So it may sound cold, but it's
absolutely,
it's it's just
absolutely.
what it is. We have to make those bold stances, so that we're not leading an
Well,
unhappy, miserable existence.
well,
Go ahead.
even there, it's almost. I think we need to normalize it sounding cold. Right? It needs to be normalized that you have to live your life, you have to live your dreams, and not someone else's.
Absolutely, man. You gotta live your life. You gotta live your
So,
dreams. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
mhm. No, I thought we got cut off
We did. I
for
think we did.
silent
We
there,
did
and I was done
momentarily get cut
speaking.
off. That's why I wasn't sure if you had finished or if we just
Okay,
got cut off. But yeah, it was a momentary glitch there. So, um,
all right, all right, it's all good.
all right, all right. So,
So
so,
yeah, I think that's key. Just be ready.
absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you this: you spoke of earlier about how your mom and your grandmother even were big influencers on your life, and a lot of times I think we sometimes interchange the terms role models and mentors. We can have people around us that we admire,
Mm,
we love what they do and how they are or whatever, but then there's mentors who can come into our lives or that we can get connected with that actually have a more hands-on approach and not so much trying to tell us what to do, but more so to help us to navigate through whatever that path is that we're trying to go on. So with that said, I'm curious to know from you, did you actually have a mentor or another, quote unquote respected individual in your life that actually helped you directly in your preparation for the career path and or some of maybe your job choices that you had? Did you have that kind of person in your life, and what was that experience like if you did?
yeah, absolutely. I've had multiple mentors, and I hesitant to say there was I was ever in a formal mentoring program, right?
Hmm.
Where someone was assigned to be my mentor, right? But I've had tons of people, and I think if we look at the definition of a mentor, someone who's experience that we value, um, and trust, and someone who can give us advice, right? They're not necessarily kind of specific job titles. Something. It's actually an experience to be a mentor and a mentee, and it comes in many forms. And I think for me, um, I really had a lot of people in my life who I saw as successful, who I've kind of built relationships with, who that you know I could trust them and their advice, and obviously if they're successful, that they kind of did something right, and and I could follow or listen to, and well, I think having someone, and like I said, in my case, multiple people throughout the years to really kind of have advice, and you can ask questions, and they can give you sound advice or recommendations, or even walk you through scenarios to allow you to come up with kind of the response or direction that you want to go. But absolutely have, and I still have people in
That's awesome. That's awesome. So,
my life.
and I know me personally, I I haven't had a multitude of mentors in my life, to be perfectly honest. There was one person in particular, that I would definitely classify as a mentor, and I met him when I was in high school. He was actually the one who helped to facilitate me getting into college. He introduced me to Eau Claire before I knew what Eau Claire was, or that it even existed. And he played a role, in my life, growing up. It was almost like he was like a surrogate dad in many ways, but it was more of a mentoring type of loving relationship. And I really cherished it. He exposed me to a lot of new things that I had never tried before. And so I just appreciated having that outside voice, if you will, that male role model, slash mentor, that looked like me, but also had certain characteristics and experiences and traits about him that I wanted to model, some of that and apply it to my own
Mhm.
life. And so, that was wonderful to have that. And then, like I said, there are also going to be some key people that you meet along the way that they don't necessarily fit the traditional mold of mentor, but there was a lot about them that was mentor like in terms of the pouring into you, whether it
Right.
was, again, and these
Right.
usually for me, these were usually men who were like father like figures, whether it was the guy that my mom dated when we were,
Mm.
that I was growing up. He was the many conversations that we've had, over the years back then, and things that I didn't always understand at the time, but he was dropping nuggets and knowledge into me. Or I'll even take something even more common that you and I can relate to. You think about our days in college, and we had the likes of somebody like a Jim Vance, who was like, for us,
Mhm.
he was like that dad on campus that for many of us who came from homes where our dads were not active in the home, he was that kind of person that you could go to talk to, and you felt like he had your best interest at heart. He had your back, to look out for you. He wanted to see you not just get to college, but actually graduate from college. And you knew there wasn't anything that you
Right.
couldn't go to him
So,
for,
yes.
to be of help, to be of support to you. So when you have people like that, that's really a valuable thing. But with that said, there are some people, who have desired or maybe have even just heard that they should have a mentor, but they don't quite know how to go about that process. What would your advisement be for somebody who's desiring to get a mentor, but they just don't really know where to start? What would you say to them?
Yes. So that's interesting, and someone who desires someone to have a mentor. You really have to, I guess, maybe describe as position yourself
Mhm.
to be a mentee, right? Position yourself such that someone wants to be your mentor. If you're in the workforce, if you're, not in the workforce, you're in school, whatever, really, kind of, kind of being involved in things that are, away from your regular job, right? In a company, being involved in other activities and resource groups so that you can create some visibility for yourself, so that, someone who potentially could be a mentor will see you in that light. It's probably they're only gonna see you in your professional regular job light, and kind of understand that that's what you're supposed to do. You're
Mm,
just supposed to be successful in that role. But if they can see you doing other things and pitching in and rolling up your sleeves to, you know, uh, you know, if your organization has some charity events and things like that, you're participating, kind of really in a leadership role. People gravitate towards those individuals. People want to help those individuals. People want to be a part of that and support them, particularly if they're in a, higher leadership role within an organization. Um, you know, you know, if that's not you, right, and it's not right for everybody. Some people are, kind of a little bit more, kind of introverted, and they're not as outgoing and things like that. You can still get mentors by, kind of almost having informal mentors. You can, kind of try to establish a working relationship with kind of someone in the organization to where you start, kind of on a communication standpoint,
mhm.
introductions, things like that, and say, hey, try to schedule some one-on-one time. A lot of times it's difficult for leadership in organizations to have time for one-on-one time. There's just too much going on for them to find that time. But if you can get the time, seek their advice. If there's something that you're wondering about how you should respond, or how you should actions you might want to take, seek their advice. Especially with the advantage of LinkedIn, you can see people's profiles and where they've been, what they've done, and you can ask them about previous organizations, or if they've outlined some kind of projects they've been on, or accomplishments they've had. You can ask them about that, and not just, hey, how was it? Kind of ask a kind of a pointed question about their experience while they were doing this, and what were maybe some of the hurdles that they faced. So you're gaining knowledge. You're using that information to help you, because at some point you're going to be in that situation and you're going to know what to do. So I
Mhm.
think I think those are probably the two big options that I could think of right now. A
Yeah.
recommendation, I should say.
And I love that, because I love the fact that you pointed out, you identified the fact that everybody is not just going to be that person who has a natural way about them where they've never met a stranger. That person who can just walk into a big room
Correct.
of people that they don't know, and in 15 minutes you think that they knew everybody. There are some people, their personalities are just big like that. They're outgoing like that. But then there are people, quite frankly, like I consider, it's funny because whenever I tell people who know me that I'm introverted, they almost kind of laugh
Mm,
at that, because they're like, no, you're not.
right.
You do, if they look at my life today, they say, well, you do a podcast, you moderate at church, you are Mr. Talkative, Mr. Personality, all of that. And I try to tell people, I say, one, I was not always like that. I mean, even literally when I think back to college, I still remember when my mom and, friends and family that came up, when they dropped me off at school and when they finally pulled off. And I remember, and you're because you're familiar with the campus, I'm on upper campus and I'm literally walking around on campus for the first time. I'm all by myself. And I remember talking to myself out loud. And I just said, today is a new day. From this point forward, the days of me being shy and timid and quiet and all of that kind of stuff is over. I said, if there's something that I'm interested in, something that I want to be a part of or whatever, even if it's something I've never tried before, I'm just going to make myself open to experience those things. That was like a personal promise that I made to myself on day one before the school year had even started. I'm on campus. I made that promise to myself, and I'm so glad that I stuck with that promise, because it was the beginning of the real Joe, if you will, coming up out of me. And so that kind of speaks to what you said, that even an introvert person like myself, as I was at that time, and I still have that, a little bit of that in me,
Hmm.
it requires that you put yourself out there. You gotta be willing to have that
Right.
courage to just put yourself out there, not worrying about how you look, not worrying about what people think, just put yourself out there, and you'll be surprised the moment you open yourself
Mhm.
up. People will begin to take notice, and people will, and if what you're putting out there is of a positive energy, it's of a an enlightening type of energy. It's a welcoming energy. People will gravitate to you, and they're going to like you, and they're going to want to know more about you. And if they're in the right positions and situations, they're going to want to pour into you. They're going to want to connect you. They're going to want to get you set up in certain ways that will help elevate you and propel you into a variety of different areas, a variety of different ranges. So, when you ask me, if anybody would ask me, what I enjoyed most about college, it was really about finding myself and just coming up out of
Mm.
that shell
Mm.
once and for all. And I've
Right.
been out of that shell ever since. So those fears that
Right.
I used to have, I don't have them anymore. It's just
Awesome.
I'm a lot. There's a more freedom with that. So again, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter. You need to have those opportunities to connect at least with one person. I mean, you don't have to have 20 mentors, but if you can have one person who is in your corner, who wants to pour into you, who wants to help you, you want to take advantage of that. But you have to put yourself out there, because you could be the most talented, educated individual out there with a lot to offer. But if nobody knows, then how are
Right.
they're not going to come. They can't come find you hiding in the corner somewhere. You gotta be willing
They,
to put yourself out there. So
they won't come find you.
yeah, and unfortunately, you'll get
Right.
left. You'll get looked over
Yeah.
and passed by if you get
Mhm.
too caught up in,
Absolutely.
in that type of mindset. So um,
Absolutely.
and, and
Absolutely.
and with that said, I know we've been talking about the concept of mentors, but I think there's even another level to that. We talked about role models, we talked about mentors, but I want to tap into a little bit just about that support network, like
Yes.
the people
Yes.
that you have around you in your life, not just work life, but even personal life. If you would speak a little bit about the value of having that circle of friends, if you will, the circle of network, if you will, that, not only having it, but making sure that they're the right type of circle, the right type of connectors, if you will, that you have in that around you. What would you speak to that, and maybe even give examples if you have something like that in your life, of that circle of friends, if you will, kind of share that a little bit with
Mhm.
us.
Oh, absolutely. It's critical, right? It's one of those things that you can go through life by yourself, doing kind of making your own decisions, and some people are successful, but kind of having that network of like-minded people who they have nothing to gain, they have nothing to lose, so so they can give you, I guess I would say, an unbiased opinions. And a lot of times people don't want to hear unbiased opinions, right? They want to hear the opinion
Mm-hmm.
they have, and they want to have their opinion supported. But you really need to have unbiased opinions on literally, any major or critical decision that you may have. Um, you asked if I actually have two groups uh, that I'm involved in, and they are both online, right? And they are both, we meet, I guess they both started during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
One group is, literally individuals from Seattle to Maryland, and stops in between, right? And then another group is mainly local, with some in the Midwest people. But we get on and we talk. It's kind of, we like to call it chopping it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime there's something career related, people bring it to the table. We chop it up, and you'd be surprised at how many people have had those experiences, or know how to navigate. It's kind of a experience that they've had that's kind of been similar. And it gives that insight, so that when you're ready to kind of make a decision, or do something, you kind of how things are going to play out. You know how people are going to respond, and you kind of you prepared your response to their response, and based on potential scenarios, and it's really just discussing, right? Just talking about whatever. And it's interesting, when I was kind of looking for a new job, career. We talk about it, and they were, kind of surprised that I switched industries, right?
Mm,
And I've been in, I think this is my sixth different industry, but I'm not industry focused in what I do. Right? I can do what I do in any industry. Um,
mm,
so it's not limited to a certain, kind of environment and things like that. And, and some of them are actually recruiters in the tech industry. And so, they kind of have that mindset, right? And I'm kind of thinking I broke that mold stereotype for careers and things like that. But really good to, kind of have that talk things through. I yeah, it's not for everyone, right? Because not everyone's comfortable. Some of these people I met on the chat group, and you know, um, because they were friends of friends, and turns out, we just all kind of have similar career objectives and kind of similar aspirations in life, and it kind of worked out. And I think it's critical, particularly like during the pandemic when things were shut down and there's nowhere to go, and you kind of don't want to go somewhere because you kind of realize that that's how this the virus was spread, was going places, so you wanted to stay away, but you still need to be connected, right? You still
mm-hmm.
have people to talk to and have conversations and get things out and hear different perspectives and tell jokes and the whole list that we like to do, right?
Right, right. I love that, man. I love the fact that you, like I said, you kind of tapped into it from a different angle, getting connected with some groups of like minded individuals where you, as you can say, as you said, we can chop it up, talk about a variety of different subjects. So, again, just want to reemphasize to our listeners, in that career path that you're on, you want to have those voices, those people that you can have these kind of candid conversations with about work life and work aspirations and all of the things that go along with it. But and I think even more than that as well. Yeah, if you can, you also want to, of course, have a level of accountability when you have that circle of friends around you, that network, if you will. Are these people who will hold me accountable? They will impart information and knowledge into me that I can take into the workspace so that I don't risk blowing a good thing that I have because I'm not being accountable of my actions,
Right. Right.
accountable of my work ethic, accountable of my behavior, accountable of my integrity and my character. If I'm lacking in those areas, it doesn't matter how bright or smart I am. The company's not going to keep me if I'm up there doing some, involved in some foolishness and some nonsense. And again, when you're trying to aspire and be the best versions of yourself within the concept, within the context of your career paths, it is important that you have those like-minded individuals, because why do I want to be talking to somebody who's not interested in these type of things? I mean, because we're going in opposite directions, and that's not going to be beneficial to me.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I don't, I can't respect you for who you are or whatever. We're just on different paths. And so I can't hang with you. I can't have these kind of conversations with you because we're not just on the same level. It's not that I'm better than you. It's just that we're just going in different directions. And so, and that's okay. It's okay to go in different directions,
Right.
but you don't have to go, nor were you meant to go alone in these different directions. We all need that support system, that support network. So I'm glad that you spoke to that. So I think that's really, really key. So, um, so Eric, when you think back to, you've spoken about, I've been on a lot of different jobs in a lot of different industries. I've had my share of different jobs, in different industries over my years in the career world, if you will. But one of the realities that we experience, particularly when we get into adulthood, is that part of the reason why we have careers, or jobs, however you want to reference it, because we have a need to earn revenue. We need income because we got bills to pay. We got bills to pay, as well as there's some things in life that we just want to enjoy, to experience, to partake in. And so, with that said, when you think about your career path in particular, um, how what has been your primary approach when you go from one career or one job to another job in terms of how much is it about the fit and opportunity versus the financial gain that you get out of it, and what would you say is the best, if you have some advisement to offer, how does one know how to properly navigate or balance, if you will, the two,
Mhm.
when making the decision of, should I take this job? Should I go down this career path? Because
Right.
now we're not talking about whether or not somebody is influencing us per se to go a different direction. It's like, do I take this job because it offers a lot of money, but I'm not going to really love it very much other than the paycheck? Or do I take a job that I really love, but it doesn't pay all that great? How do you meet that demand, strike that balance, if you will? What's that experience been like for you? And again, what advisement would you have when trying to make that decision, as you're choosing what to take on career wise?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's a good question because I I just experienced it as I was kind of looking for a new role. My previous organization, it's kind of ran into some financial difficulties and decided that they needed to cut about 100 people, and I was in the pool. So I'm out looking for something, my next position, right, next opportunity. Um, interviewed with a number of organizations, and I could tell during the interview that and I'm really, I guess I'm interviewing them as well as they're interviewing me.
Hmm.
I'm looking for signs and signals of how the kind of the work interactions are between people, kind of the types of questions they're asking. In today's job world, you're getting interviewed by people who are not professional interviewers, right? And it's
Hmm.
almost like playing poker. You can read them,
Right.
right? Just based on the questions they're asking. And I had a few different positions that I just knew that if they were to make me an offer, I'm not going to take it. And I actually had to decline one, not because of the financial piece, because it was the culture. It was just an environment that I knew I did not want to be in. I kind of did you know I just knew that it was not for me. And some of the things I look for really are, how they interact with each other. If there's a corporate office, versus a plant, and what the relationship is between the corporate office and the plant. How much autonomy that I would have in the role in order, in being able to make decisions, for the organization, or do I have to kind of go through a bunch of red tape to get decisions made? Because if you have to go through that red tape to get decisions made, you're not going to be effective. It's just literally impossible until there's something significant that needs to happen. And if you have a bunch of layers, and so just things like that, throughout my career, I've been able to understand and learn, and be able to apply for that next organization, right? Here are the things that you need, that I need, in order to be successful. So that's what I'm looking for. Obviously the pay is going to factor in there. um, yeah, I actually I interviewed for a vice president role with one of the professional basketball teams in their front office, and the pay was staggeringly low. I told him no, thank you.
Mm.
I was like, I'm just
Wow.
not interested, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, it would have been a high profile, you know, role, for that organization, but they're associated with a arena that had several hundred shows and concerts, and you name it. They've done it, or they're going to do it. Had plans to do it, and I just said, yeah, that's nice, that's beautiful, but the pay is not where it should be for what I think I'm worth. And so I'm
Hmm.
glad I held out because the role that I have now really, kind of hit all of those pieces that I was looking for. But I think the key is really to know, right, and not, and be willing to not settle
Mm,
for, just to get a job, or to get a job because of it pays a certain amount. Now, I could say that, right? I've been, in my career for 30 plus years now, and saved up, and I can, spend 3 months not working and not, go into debt, and things like that. But sometimes people have financial reasons that they have to take a job, right? And some people will take a job that they're miserable at because the job gives them or forces them the lifestyle that they want to live. So it's a balance, right? And I think if individuals can find that balance, yeah, every company has problems, no matter where you
hmm.
go. I've not worked for an organization that was perfect, right? And so every company has problems, and it's just a matter of finding the ones that have, the problems that you can deal with and you can live with, as well as that, kind of have the right compensation.
Right, right. That's a great approach that you have there, and I love the fact that you highlighted because it was something that I was thinking in my mind as you were speaking was don't settle. That's really
Hmm.
that's kind of the lead into you pursuing a particular career, particularly, like you said, you're interviewing for a job. Don't settle. You didn't specify in saying that one particular thing about a job is more important than the other. It was sort of a culmination of things. So I heard you mention
Oh,
about
absolutely.
culture matter to me, the culture of the
Hmm.
environment. So if the culture is not right, it doesn't matter that it pays big bucks. If the culture is going to be toxic and I'm going to be stressed out all the time, as they say, all money's not good money. And I've worked jobs before in my lifetime where money was good, but it didn't make me feel good because of the culture of the environment.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, you could have another scenario where the job is an excellent opportunity. It aligns with your skill sets, it aligns with your passion, all of those things. But for whatever reason, the job is offering a staggeringly low compensation. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I love this. But, if I were to accept it, even though it's something that I'm passionate and I love, I'm settling, and so
Right.
maybe I pass on that because I'm settling because you clearly don't acknowledge my worth for taking on something like this. So it doesn't matter that I really love this. Do you value my worth? And that's why I also like the fact that you said when you're going into these interview situations, don't walk into them just being the one interviewed. You actually should be interviewing that company as
Yes.
well. Have questions in mind that you want to ask of the company. That it's not just about are you good enough to work for us. It's also about are you good enough to have me. Am I worth your time? I mean, are
Right.
you worth my time? Or do I need to
Right.
go somewhere
Right.
else? Because I got standards as well too. You may have a package to offer, but I am a package to offer as well. And so if our packages don't align, then it's just not a good fit. No hard feelings. No, you know,
Right.
it's been real. It's
Right.
cool. Thanks for the opportunity, but I passed.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you have to again to get that right mix, that right, that right balance, if you will, is so important. Because even to the balance piece, you could have a great job, it could be great money, but if you are, let's just say, a family man, you got kids, you got a spouse, but you're away from them more than you're with them because you work all the time. Yeah, you may be financially providing, but if the family is disconnected, is that necessarily the best fit for you? The
Yeah.
sacrifice that you
Hmm.
make, does it far outweigh the benefits? And so all of these things play a role. And then, like you spoke of earlier, you were in a position, thank goodness that despite being, out of work for a few months, you didn't miss a beat because of, financial decisions that you made. But there also is the reality. And it's a very well known documented reality that, 50% of our country lives check to check. And for some people, sometimes they have to keep working because it's just, I got bills, and even if it means it's a job that I don't really like, if it pays my bills, I might have to tolerate it in the interim. And so I guess the lesson to that is, for all of us, is to just, you know, think about those things in the sense of not making yourself, vulnerable to where you have to settle for less because you didn't make sound decisions financially. And to make sound decisions financially
Right.
does not require you to be a wealthy person. It just requires you to have, discipline and good practices, good financial practices. I mean, there's some things, and I think you and I talked about that even last time we were together. You know, there's some things that I would have done totally different financially if I knew 20, 30 years ago what I know today. All I know, however, is that I grew up in a home where, I was taught in terms of finances, I was taught from a mom, a single mom, who was the master of stretching a dollar. She was a master of how to get the most out of what you had. And I learned that craft and I mastered it as well, to my detriment, to her detriment. So it was like there are certain spending decisions that I wouldn't have made earlier on in my years, that I would have invested more, or I would have saved more, because I didn't need to be throwing that money towards that. But that's how I was taught. And that's all I knew,
Right.
But again,
Right.
as you grow older and you experience some bumps on the head, and you get to, you get around people who have a little bit more knowledge base in that area, you learn and say, oh, you know what, that makes more sense. And you start to pivot, you start to make adjustments and modifications. So even if you got started, I
Mhm.
say all that to say that even if you've gotten started off on a slow track, if you will, financially, and didn't maybe think about things like investments and savings and things like that, it's not too late to make the transition. It's just that once you have the information, then you take those steps, even if it's baby steps, to transition to that point, to where if you do find yourself in a work situation that is not the best for you, it's not a good fit, that you don't feel like you're pressed to have to stay there, or you're pressed to have to tolerate it, all because you didn't position yourself in a way that you could step away, for your own peace of mind, so to speak. So that's
You know,
really
you know,
so
and
important.
yeah, that's making me think of when I first started in my career. Um, I I went to speak with the recruiter to kind of thank her for the recruiting process, and I actually kind of felt bad. I'm fresh out of college, right, and I'm negotiating, and I think back later, it's like, well, what did I know, right? What did I know at the time that I could stand on, that I could, be up here negotiating? But it worked. I got a 10% increase in the salary, right? So I kind of felt good about it, just now that I'm the one interviewing people and things like that. I just, smirk at what, kind of how I was. But anyway, I went to thank her and, kind of say, appreciate it, kind of her support and, whatever. And she gave me probably, the best advice. I mean, I wouldn't even call it advice. I call it a career gem that I've carried from that day forward. And she said to me that you should always keep your resume fresh, which means,
Mm,
adding to your resume, skills and things like that, and update it, right? Because she said that companies make decisions that have nothing to do with you or your performance, but will impact you significantly. And that just stuck with me, like I said, from that day forward. And it was interesting because that company was a utility, and they had 6 months after I started, they had their first ever layoff.
mm,
And there were, I'm probably 23, 24, 25, somewhere in there. Um, and there were, at the time, I called them grown men because they were, kind of my age now, mid 40s on, that they were in the hallways crying, grown men crying because they just lost their job. Now,
mm,
they got those jobs right out of high school. They had somebody tell them, hey, come on over here and you can have this job. And they've been there for, 20, 30 years, and they've, gotten promotions and applied for other jobs, and they never went to college. They, got all the toys, nice houses, and things, and, kind of really relied on that income to live that lifestyle. And I just like, I am never going to be in that situation. I'm going to be a grown man crying in the hallway because somebody took my job away, right?
mm,
And so that was something that I think, I'm, happy to share that with anybody who, is starting in their career, is midway through their career, or whatever. It's something that you should always be prepared for companies to make decisions, that, again, not based on you, but will impact you. And it happened. It's not, throughout my career, it's not the first time it's happened. So in this most recent time it happened, I was like, yep, that's fine. I was looking for something else anyway. Time to move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of how you deal with it allows you to deal with it in a better light than, probably, some individuals who just, go into that, pit of despair because they lost their job. No,
Right.
that,
Right.
losing a job is in some cases a favor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm glad you pointed that out. Sometimes,
Mm,
and I'm gonna repeat that, sometimes losing a job is a favor. And when I say favor, and I'm assuming you mean the same thing, it can be the favor of God upon you that you lost that
yes.
job,
Yeah.
because I'm a firm believer that sometimes we can, in the working of a job, especially if it's a job that has provided certain creature comforts, if you will. Pay is good. The benefits are good. I know what to expect each and every day. When I go in, even if it's an uncomfortable situation, at least I know what I'm dealing with. Sometimes we can be in a mode, in a groove, if you will, that allows us to delve deep into this place of comfort, where we get so comfortable where we stop growing. We get so comfortable where we stop, thinking about making any kind of moves or of elevation or anything of the like. And so when God knows that there's more to you, that there's more in you, more work of you to do, whether it's within that company or whether it's completely outside of the company, which a lot of times when God is shaking your world up like that, it isn't even that you're supposed to do something more in the company. He's kind of telling you it's time to leave that comfort zone and to take you into
Mhm.
another stratosphere of what I have for you. And that's when we really start talking about that conversation of purpose. Your
Mhm.
purpose is not necessarily with the thing that you're doing right now to pay your bills. And so, that being said, you have to, as you stated, you can't, don't necessarily look at the possibility of a job loss as being, a punishment, a detriment to you. Sometimes it could be the very best thing that you needed, if for no other reason, because you were just getting a little too comfortable, or
Mhm.
perhaps the environment itself was just becoming a little bit too toxic, and you were trying to hang in there, you were trying to withstand it, but it's been to your detriment. You're breaking yourself
Mhm.
down, just trying to take all of this, and it's just too much. And sometimes,
Right.
again, the check is good, the benefits are good. I got longevity here, I got history here, but it's like, you know what? I don't have peace of mind though. I don't have
Right.
restful nights of sleep. My family dynamic is falling apart. I'm not myself these days. When kind of stuff starts kicking in, the mental health element of it is out of sync. Um, you gotta like do some deep soul searching and say, is this really worth it, or do I need to be making some moves? And so I
Mhm.
think that's why what's so awesome about what you shared about the woman who you spoke to that gave you that nugget of advice about keep the resume fresh. Not because we're trying to encourage you to jump jobs every 2 or 3 months, but don't ever get so relaxed and comfortable and content to where you don't leave yourself open for new opportunities, for new challenges, for new adventures, if you will, in this career path slash walking in your purpose path of life. I mean, keep it open, keep it wide open, and you just never know what's out there. That it could be the very least thing that you expected to be what you needed to be doing. Opportunity presents itself, you're catapulted into it, and it's the happiest you've ever been. And so,
Right.
you want to kind of keep those things in mind. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it even taps into the question that I was getting ready to ask you, and you kind of answered it a little bit of it. And it was something that you and I had talked about before the episode, and this kind of centers around the subject of how to properly manage those work related setbacks. So you talked about the setback, what happens when I lose my job that I didn't expect to see that happening. The setback of, being in a company where I've been here for a while, but now it's just I'm miserable being up in here. It's just, I'm not happy anymore. Maybe it's a setback of, I thought that I'd been working my butt off and doing a really good job, and this opportunity came up in the company and I got passed over again. They keep passing me over. They keep making me train people that ultimately become my boss.
Mm-hmm.
I feel used. I feel,
Mm-hmm.
mistreated. I feel taken for granted. So I know all of these things that I'm rambling off. I mean, I've experienced them at one point or another in the course of my career life, my work life, and you may have experienced some of these things as well. So I guess to that point, and again, I know you've kind of answered this to a certain degree, but is there any other advice that you would have, just generally speaking, about when you have these quote unquote, work related setbacks that can come oftentimes unexpected? What is the best mindset? What is the best plan of preparation, if you will, that one can embrace that kind of helps you to be able to navigate when you find yourself in those type of work related setbacks? If you have anything additional to offer that you haven't already spoken to.
I got plenty. I think one thing that people oftentimes do is relinquish control of their career to their employer,
Mm,
right? And they expect their employer to take care of them, and that that doesn't work. That I mean, that may have worked years ago, but that's a fallacy. And I think some companies will try to kind of garner that loyalty
mm,
by promoting that or kind of using that in their advertisement. Yeah, we'll take care of you. We'll just stick around. We'll promote you. We'll do this, and yada yada yada. But companies don't do that. I go back to the job where grown men were crying. They had yeah, they didn't take care of themselves, their career, from a career perspective, and kind of do whatever. But they devoted their lives to the company, and the company decided that they no longer needed it. So that taught me that loyalty piece needs to go both ways, and if it doesn't, you know. It's certainly not going to go one way, and that's from me to the organization. I have conversations with my high school basketball coach all the time. Each time I change jobs, he just I could just tell he's old school, right? You get a job, you stay in.
mm-hmm,
Nah, no. Every time I've taken a different job, the minimum salary increase has been like 15%, right? Are you going to get 15% pay increase during the annual merit ratings or merit increases? Most
nope.
likely not, right? Right? And so people do themselves a disservice by sticking around in organizations. But I think the mindset you asked about really is asking yourself who's in control of your career. If you say you're leaving it to the employer, you're left with the fate of whatever the employer does. If you take control of your career, right, and look for opportunities, and it's interesting because the old adage of people job hopping and things like that, that's gone. Companies don't expect people to stay longer than 5 years anymore. They expect people to move around and job hop, so to speak. That's how you gain experience. That's how you increase your salary. That's how you kind of move up in kind of levels or positions for manager, director, vice president, et cetera. You kind of take it that role in another organization. When I was in that first job, with the utility, we had a consultant come in, and one of the things that the consultant had around kind of careers is he had this phrase called "no acorn city." And again, this is 30 years ago, or close to 30 years ago. I still remember it like it was yesterday because it was so impactful. And the whole meaning of this no acorn sitting is, if you think of how an acorn grows, it gets into the ground, maybe gets covered by leaves turn to dirt, finally gets covered, starts to sprout. Acorn trees or oak trees that sprout acorns, um, they take like decades to grow, right?
Hmm.
They take forever. And so if you're doing acorn sitting, that means you're sitting on that acorn waiting on it to grow. You're sitting at that job waiting for something successful to happen, and it can take forever. And so I always think, you ask about the advice, it's, ask yourself who's in control of your career.
I love that. I love that. Again, you're saying take control. Quit waiting and sitting back, waiting for somebody to do for you, and take some
Hmm.
accountability and do for yourself.
Yeah.
And it could be a variety of different things, like you spoke to, whether it's what does my self development look like? Am I taking new classes? Am I reading new materials, or am I doing anything like that to help expand my knowledge base? Am I, as you spoke of earlier, am I keeping that resume fresh and exploring my options from time to time to see what's out there, to see if there's some new opportunities? Or am I just sitting here, like you said, playing the loyalty game? Because that's one of the big differences that you see now in the new generation of kids, the 20 somethings right now. They have no problem walking away from a job. And if you maintain that old school mentality, you would automatically assume that they're just disloyal, ungrateful kids. And while there may be some that are falling into that category, there are just some who they are just not content with being in places and spaces that don't edify them, that don't offer them an opportunity to grow and develop. And if they get there and they see, you know what, this is a bunch of hot mess going on here, I don't have the time for it, and they're able to they walk away, and they not only are walking away, but financially they're positioning themselves where they're not always, a lot of them are not getting themselves caught up in the acquisition of stuff, which
Yeah.
is why
Yeah.
they can quit a job and be okay because they
It's,
ain't got no problem catching an
hmm
Uber or a bus. They can be
hmm
okay because they
Yep.
ain't got a problem renting a studio apartment. I mean,
Yep.
that doesn't mean that they don't aspire to have the big house and the big cars or whatever. But in the early goings, they're like, I'm good. And if I go to enough jobs and I got a problem, they will glean the knowledge here, the knowledge there, the knowledge there, and the next thing you know, I'm just going to go ahead and start my own business.
There you
And
go.
they're just
Yep.
making it happen, which is why we see so many
Mhm.
young people doing just that. And if there's and I've mentioned this before on other broadcasts, but if you think back to the pandemic, that was one of the huge, if there's a bright light to take from the pandemic, it was the fact that it gave people an opportunity to sit still for a moment and reevaluate life. To really say, you know what, I'm seeing all of this death around me with this generational pandemic situation, and I'm sitting here and I'm just assessing, what am I doing with myself? I could be gone, I could be here today, gone tomorrow. Is that how I want it to end? If that's what I want to do, and you got some people in that quiet time, they just started tapping into their gifts, their talents, and they came up with business ideas and concepts, and they made it happen. And many of them people didn't go back to work when the doors opened back up. They just, I'm gonna open my own doors, and you got to respect that. You have to
Right.
respect
Oh,
that, and
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so for me, pandemic, you know, was a big piece in ultimately, opening up for me to finish writing my book, and
Mhm.
and opened up my mind to start thinking about some other things. Yes, do I still work a 9 to 5? Yes, but it's given me a whole new perspective about what that 9 to 5 working looks like. It's made me think about some things that I hadn't previously thought about before. There was a point in time that I was content doing the old school way of just riding it on out into the sunset till that gray old retirement age. Now I find myself like many others who are like, I don't know if I want to do that. And again, not
Right.
because you're not, it's not because you're ungrateful or anything. It's like you're thinking about, I'm exploring options. I'm not, even though I hadn't heard the term until you just said it, I'm trying not to fall in love with the acorn mindset, the mentality. I'm just gonna sit here and wait and hope for something to happen. I'm gonna cross my fingers and toes, and
Right.
and hope that something wonderful will happen. That
Right.
maybe, my loyalty and my dedication will be suffice to be appreciated and rewarded accordingly. Does that happen in some scenarios? Yeah, it does. But there's a whole lot of it where it doesn't. And just
Well,
like you referenced
yeah.
earlier about the men crying in the hallway, that could be me, that could be somebody else who's like, I thought that they loved me. I thought that they were going
Mhm,
to always take care of me.
mhm.
And you find
Right,
out, nah, not, you all right. But if it comes down to me or versus you, I'm gonna look out for me,
right, right,
and so if
right.
that's their mindset, then why shouldn't you not have a level of what I call healthy selfishness about yourself, to where you
Right.
say, I love me too, you know, I think I value me as well, probably more than
Well,
you
yeah,
do. So,
yeah. Well,
you know,
that's just it. You have to manage your career and not
hmm
give it to someone else to manage.
yeah, that's big
Yeah,
stuff, man. Big stuff, and I'm glad we're
yeah.
we're, we're hitting these conversations because I know you and I are relating to all of this, but there's got to be folks that are going to tune in to the broadcast that what we're talking about. You're a man in it. We may not be able to hear you, but you see what we're talking about. You're in that moment right now. These are the frustrations that you think
Hmm.
about every day. You get up in the morning and right before you go to bed, you're like, what am I doing? What am I missing here? What am I waiting for? What
Right,
am I waiting for? What am I scared of? What's the worst that could happen? You know,
right,
you have to play these things out, but you can't sit around and just even to that. It's okay to think and envision and all of that, but if you just do that all day long for days and weeks and months and years and you never take action, then that's just like not doing anything at all as well. So what good is that? When are you going to step out and do what clearly has been placed on your heart to do? What God is calling you to do. Get out there and do it. And that's a prayer, and that's an affirmation message that I have to give myself every day. Like, don't slow down, don't stop. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just get out there and do it to the best of your ability, and God will take care of the rest of that. If you're truly committed and consistent in what you're doing, and you're not settling, you're not allowing yourself to settle, you're not allowing yourself to get too comfortable, the possibilities are endless. And that's not a
right.
knock against being a dedicated employee. That's not a knock against expressing loyalty. You know, Loyalty is fine, but is it two way? There's a point in
Right,
time where you
right.
outgrow a situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Is your employer just as dedicated to you as you are to them?
hmm hmm Yeah. Is that dedicated? That dedication mutual? And like I said, the loyalty could be there, the dedication could be there, but like I said, sometimes it's just a matter of we've outgrown each other. We've
Right,
had
right.
relationships in life growing up that it wasn't that it was a bad relationship. It wasn't that it was a bad friendship. We just got to a point where we outgrew each other. And so
Hmm.
what used to be okay with us is no longer okay. It's time to go. It's time to go our separate ways. And that's okay.
Right.
What's not okay though is to know that you've outgrown a situation but stay anyway.
Hmm.
You've allowed yourself to be boxed in to a space that you should not be boxed into. You need to get up out of that.
Right.
So good stuff, man. So with that said, and we kind of talked a little bit about this, some of the, and I'll ask you just for clarification to make sure that I'm capturing it all. What would you say are those red flags or those warning signs, if you will, that I'm at a job, I've been working it for some time, or I'm on a career path and I've been working it for some time? What would you say are those red flags or warning signs that a person needs to pay attention to that's signaling to them it's time to go, or it's time to consider other options? What would you say are the things that you shouldn't ignore these signs that if you're feeling this, if you're experiencing it, this is your cue that you need to start making some moves, looking at another direction to go.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to look at this. First, probably internally, like how you feel about the role, and the other side is kind of actual things that are happening in the workplace, right? So let's talk about internally. If you're irritated, um, and jobs and companies can get on your nerves, right? On a regular basis. But if it's like every day you coming home from work and you are just fed up and irritated, and you know you, you're snapping at people in your house when if they say something to you wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or you feel, whatever, something's not right, right? And you feeling that internally on an emotional level, right? I had a job here with a medical device manufacturer, and I remember vividly, I was just, kind of not happy. You talk about, so it was interesting. The guy who hired me, he got moved out, and they brought in another guy from, one of the other facilities, and I'm 6'7", tall, right? This
Mm-hmm.
guy was probably 5'4", and I just knew instantly it was not going to work out. You know, he brought in somebody to, kind of be, because I telling him about, the amount of work, and he brought in somebody at a higher level than me, and I'm supposed to train this person on stuff. And I lasted probably about 6 months before I found another job, because I just knew it was not working. But in that 6 months, I was irritable. I was just not, and obviously I knew something was wrong there, and I was, making moves to get out of that situation. But yeah, it was, kind of on an emotional level. I could feel it. So that's part of it. I think the other part is, in the workplace, if you kind of actually see some things where, you are, obviously, it's pretty clear if you get passed over for promotions, that's, pretty blatant. But, even smaller things like, left off of emails, not included in communications, that perspective, projects get, sent to people who, they ain't going to be able to do that project, or you get all the work and other people don't get to do any work. Those are pretty clear signs that, the organization is kind of doing something that, just doesn't feel right to you. It's probably time to make a move, right? It's probably time, particularly if you're getting all the work and not getting promoted. That happened in my last organization to a guy in the recruiting area, and he was doing, like 50 or so recruits, or 50 or so, positions that he was trying to fill, and other people in the organization were doing 20, positions that they were trying to fill. And he finally, said, "Hey, I'm doing majority of the work here. What's going on?" And yeah, but you're so good, and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody in that group got promoted. She was out of there. He left as, I think, before they even got the last sentence of that announcement letter for that person, for the other person. And and it's something you just kind of got to be aware of and conscious of what's going on around you. I think those two are probably the biggest things I could think of.
Yeah.
Pay attention to, what your body is saying, what your emotions are saying, and then pay attention what's actually happening in the workplace. And if things aren't lining up, it's time to, pull that, freshly polished resume out the door and start shopping it around. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that a lot of times, if you're looking to make a move, um, and you have this kind of hurdle of leaving, one of the things I've always heard is that, the saying that you're never a prophet in your own land, right? That means, you're never the expert. Even if are the expert at your job, they will go to someone else to get that information. They will go outside the organization and hire consultants to come tell them the same thing that you've told them. If you're in an organization like that, that's another good sign that, time to go get that 15% pay increase.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything that you hit is spot on. Like I said, the thing that probably resonates with me the most that I've heard people speak of lately, and I've even personally experienced it myself at times, is really listening to your body. I think our bodies tell us so
Mm-hmm.
much. I've heard people talk about, being on jobs where it's, they work Monday through Friday, the weekend is going great, and then Sunday night comes, and they can already start to feel the anxiety, the migraines coming over them because they're already thinking about, I have to go into this place on Monday morning, and it's a place that doesn't resonate well with my spirit. So they're already getting
Mhm.
themselves worked up and anxious before they step in. Or maybe they're fine with the job per se. The job in itself is not a problem, but it's the leadership. So I
Mhm.
know my boss is going to be in there today. And so these knots are in my stomach because I don't know, is this going to be one of those days where the boss is nice and kind and friendly? Or is this going to be one of the days where the boss is going off and, and threatening you and making you feel like you're worthless and that you're barely lucky to have a job? I've had people do that. I've had people that I've known that they're experiencing health issues, and they were blowing it off at first only to find out that, they had a minor heart attack or was on the verge of a stroke or some other health issues have developed. And the doctor's diagnosis is saying that this is a lot of it has to do with stress, blood pressure's going up, things like that. And it's like, again, the money might be right. You might have been working this job for a long time. There might be a whole lot of things that you can speak to that are okay about the job, but then there's other part that's just messing with your peace. It's messing with the whole essence of who you are, and like you spoke about earlier, it's taking you out of character for who you are. So you're
Mhm.
normally that nice, jolly person, and now you're the irritated, snapping off on everybody person. Again, not getting rested well. You're not Nothing about what your whole being in existence is all out of whack. It's all out of sync. These are a part of those warning signs that are saying to you, you need to probably make a shift, and you probably need to do it sooner rather than later, even if it means jumping on to something that maybe might be, I'm not saying that you have to take another job that pays less, but sometimes, even if it's a temporary moment, sometimes that might have to be a factor, or you might have to expand your opportunities. Maybe you've only been used to working in this particular field, but you have some skill sets in another field. Maybe you need to explore that other industry, like you spoke of, that I've explored other industries because allowed myself to be open to where I could pivot like that. So there's advantages to that, especially when you find yourself in a toxic situation that you really need to get out of, if for no other reason, for your own personal health and well being. So those are definitely, again, good things that you made mention of these red flags that we have to pay attention to. So with that said,
Yeah.
Eric, man, this has been an awesome conversation, man. And like you said, we could easily talk about these various aspects of the job path and career path and all the dynamics that go on with it. There's so many other angles that we can go. But before I let you go, um, I'd like to kind of close things out on an encouragement note, on an empowerment note, and so the question I have for you is that, if you had a chance to speak to the younger Eric, when you think back all the experiences that you know about now, about career and how the dynamics of it work, the politics of it all, the decision making process, if you could speak to the younger version of yourself, or perhaps somebody that's having an opportunity to listen to this episode, and they're really confused right now about how to make sound decisions regarding their career path and what to pursue, what would be your closing thoughts, your closing words of encouragement that you feel like if they embrace this, if they take this on, the decision making process and figuring out where should I be going, what should I be doing with my life, will begin to start to offer up some clarity. It will begin to start coming into
Mhm.
focus a little bit better for them. What would be those words of encouragement that you would have?
Yeah, I think my younger self, I actually did a lot of things right, but I had good advice, right? And I listened to the advice that people told me. You should do this, you should save this amount, you should do, kind of, look at, kind of making sure that you have, transferable skills and all of this stuff. I did it, but I think the one thing that probably would have done differently that I have done is kind of networked a little better or networked a little more. um, it's not that I'm an introvert or anything. I just don't like to be bothered, right? And so I've always kept my circle small, and I know a lot of people. I'm kind of people and cordial and friendly and and people can't really say anything bad about me, or most people can't say anything bad about me, right? But I associate with a small group of people on a regular basis, and I think that's the one thing that successful people do is they have really good networks, and they get out and they get involved, and they've grown their network to where they can relate with people, and opportunities present themselves, and so we go, oh yeah, I know an Eric, come on, you'd be great for this role, and they put your name in a hat on things like that. And so I think that's something I think would have been, like I said, I did the schooling right, I did the job right, did the finances right, and the family. I mean, everything is I think for me, looking back, I probably would have done a better job networking early on, right, and grown my network more significantly.
Mm-hmm. And I think I would have to co-sign on that for myself personally, would be to get out and network more, put myself out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I have to bring to the table, but don't be shy about letting other people know. Don't be okay with bragging on you. It's okay to brag on yourself a bit. If you're not being,
Yeah,
you can brag on yourself without being arrogant and cocky.
right,
Just letting you know,
right.
this is what I'm about. This is what I represent.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had a little bit, even in today's time, that's still an area that I want to, improve upon, letting my voice be heard and letting people know what I got to offer and have going on. Because when people know, then they're like excited and they
Mm-hmm.
want more of it. And then you like get mad
Mm-hmm.
at yourself because it's like, that's all I had to do was like tell them. I had to put myself
Right,
out there. So
right.
even in these seasoned years of life, I at times sometimes will struggle with that. Because again, you can kind of get locked into this mindset about, well, what will people think? We get worried about other people's opinions and their
Mm-hmm.
judgments. Instead of just
Mm-hmm.
putting ourselves out there, and there's going to be somebody who is going to love what you do, love what you're about, and they're going to want more of it. And then there's going to be some people who could care less about what you're doing and what you're about. And that's okay. Because the thing is
Right,
you're not for everybody, and everybody's
right,
not for you.
right.
So quit trying to position
Absolutely.
yourself to be everything to everyone, because when you do that, you're putting a burden on your shoulders that is too big for you to carry. Even God
Mm-hmm.
himself didn't intend for you to try to be everything to everybody. He specifically
Right.
created you, equipped you with a certain set of gifts, talents, and he's designated a group of people in this lifetime. Some you've already met, some you will meet. He's equipped you for them. So get yourself together, master those skills, hone those skills together in such a way, allow yourself to be open, allow yourself to be led by him to these crowds, to these audiences, to these people, and do your thing. Because this is what you were created to do. This is the service that you were created to provide in this life that's been God given to you. We quit trying to be everything to everybody. Quit trying to be people pleasers. Been guilty of that. We're trying to be a people pleaser. We talked about that very early on in the show about, I'm only doing this to make this person happy. I'm only doing this to get the
Right.
approval of this person. They're either going to approve or they're not. They're either going to like it or they're not. That's not your problem. That's their
Mm-hmm.
problem. You do what you've been destined to do, what you've been called to do, and own that and be happy with that. Whether you got a big, massive audience of cheerleaders, or if you only have a select few who love what you do and support you all the way. I would much rather have the smaller circle of devoted, loyal, truly behind me, got my back type folks in my corner than to just say that have the bragging rights of the crowd, only for me to
Right.
know that the moment I slip up, the moment I fall off, even if it's temporary, they're nowhere to be seen. They not picking up the
Mm-hmm.
phones. I can't talk to them because they were never there for me truly. They were just riding my coattail of the high moment that I was going through until I fell off. Then now they don't know me. I don't want that, so those are the things that we want to keep in mind, in not only in our career paths, but in life. So yeah, man. So again, man,
That's
Eric,
for
this has been
sure.
yes. This has been an awesome conversation, man. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I thank you for even suggesting that we have the conversation, and and I could very well see us, looking at other angles of this, or perhaps other subject matters you and I've talked about, perhaps in the future. So I'm definitely open anytime for that kind of thing, man. This is a wonderful time, very much needed conversation, and I've been blessed and hearing your insights and inputs on a variety of different topics. And I know our listeners who tune in are going to be blessed as well, man. 'Cause some nuggets have been dropped, some gems have been dropped that can be applied immediately to our lives. So thank you so much for that. And for my listeners, if you've enjoyed, what we've been doing today, you like the broadcast, you like the content, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment. Because again, as always, this is what it's all about. We want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift. You saw we shared some very personal things, some stories of our own experiences, being transparent, being open, letting you know that we don't have it all figured out. We've gone through these same challenges, these same difficulties in our career choices and paths, and the battles that we've had to go through along the way. Every one of us at some point in time are going to experience these things. But, in the end, there is a pathway to get through those challenging moments. First of all, you got to understand those challenging moments are there for a reason. They are growth opportunities. So look at them as such. And then, of course, who are you counting on? Who's in that circle? Who are you connecting with? Who's your accountability partners? Who are those people that you're allowing to pour into you? Those things matter as well. But ultimately, who is that number one source that you can rely upon, that you can call upon, that you can lean into, and definitely in the most difficult of times? And that's God himself. And so I would be remiss if I did not reemphasize that, as well as share with you that if you don't have that relationship intact, I promise you, if you make that relationship, you make that decision today, it'll be the best decision that you ever make. Because bottom line is, there's not a job that can offer you enough money, enough title, enough prestige, enough of anything that'll be greater than the gift of what God and the relationship with him is for you. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you for tuning in once again. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. You keep persevering. Quit trying to do life by yourself. We have a God that's the ultimate problem solver. Nothing is too big for him. And specifically to the relation of our topic for this evening, get around that circle of people. Put yourself out there. Allow yourself to be seen and heard for the value and the worth that you are. Do not settle. Do not allow the paycheck to dictate your purpose, your career path, your goals in life. We're not dismissing getting the bag, but don't let the bag control you. Don't let the job control you. Be your own, have your own mind, have your own thought process in that. Have control over your career path, not letting that career control you. So with that said, you take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. And we thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Take care until then.